Okay, I think we're officially ready to start here. Okay, so hello and welcome to Concordia University's fourth space. Thank you for joining us for the 18th CIREQ PhD Students Conference, a job market information session for PhD students in economics. To help situate you, we are streaming to YouTube live from fourth space, which is located on unceded Indigenous lands in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. At Fourth Space, we work with our university community to mobilize knowledge by co-creating daily activities to examine research questions and projects in development at the university. We are running this event as a live stream meeting, so we welcome your comments and questions with a raised hand or via the chat if you're joining by Zoom. For those of you in the space, if you'd like to participate, just let us know by raising a hand and we'll get a microphone to you. It is now my pleasure to hand it over to your moderator, Ryan Perrin.
Hello, everyone. Apparently, I'm back here from popular demand. Thank you for the laughs. I'm from Concordia University, and I'm happy to welcome back Lurby Yergun from the Bank of Canada, Jessica Burnley from the Analysis Group, and joining us this year is Alexandra Grakovetsky from Border and Services Canada. So we're going to start by each of our guests giving us a small presentation talk of what they know, and then we're going to go into the question and answer period. And I guess we'll just go in reverse order of how people showed up. So Larry, would you like to start us off?
No, but okay. So I'm Lurby. I'm originally from the Netherlands.
Can you please speak into a microphone for everyone?
Yeah. Last time I had one on. Yeah, I think. Is it on? Yeah. So my name is Lurby. I'm from the Netherlands. Did my PhD in the Netherlands. Did it on statistics, basically, extreme value theory, financial markets as well. I took a couple of courses in that. Went to the LSE, London School of Economics, did a postdoc there for 3 years at the Systemic Risk Center. Then went on the job market with my job market paper. Met a couple of people from the Bank of Canada in Japan, where I was on a conference. Seemed like a very jolly bunch. So it was also an easy entrance into the Bank of Canada. I contacted a couple of people. So when the job market came, I got an interview, fly out, got the job at the Bank of Canada. So let me tell you a little bit about the Bank of Canada. Bank of Canada has departments. I assume you guys know what we do, but we have basically 6 departments. 4 of them are directed towards more the financial markets and 2 more at the general Canadian economy. Within those 6 departments, we have PhDs that mainly do research. They fall under an umbrella called EFR, which is more the research umbrella of the Bank of Canada. And so all the PhDs whose main task is doing research are basically planted in all these departments. I'm in the financial markets department, where I focus on my research on understanding option prices, reactions of financial markets to interest rate announcements. For instance, I did this kind of research before coming to the bank. That's, I guess, partially why they hired me, because our interests were aligned. And basically my task is to publish academic papers. So in that sense, it's a very academic job. Another part of my job is to participate in a policy discussion. So I'm within a policy team. People have meetings. I'm sitting in on those meetings. They have a couple of questions. I have a kind of informed view from the academic side, and I participate in discussion, and so I advise more. That's basically my role as a PhD researcher within the bank. Sometimes you have to do specific, or you undertake certain projects which are very specific and are probably where you use some data or use some theory, but generally it's more of an advisory role that you play towards people who need help with certain questions. So that's about the Bank of Canada culture there. As a Dutch person, we are very direct. We don't mean anything by it. We just get straight to the point. Initially, I thought the Canadians were just being polite, but I think they're actually nice as opposed to just being polite. So yeah, it's a very nice environment to work. People are super nice, super helpful. I think the whole structure of your pay and how you perform well is all directed towards cooperation, being helpful. innovating. So everything is kind of, your bonus part of your salary is kind of directed towards being a team player and also publishing well. So that also determines a little bit where the culture. So I think one difference with universities is where I think there's like a fixed workload to distribute, which is mainly teaching. We don't really have that within the bank. So there's, talked yesterday with an academic about it, like there's not such a, yeah, sometimes they say it's a bit of a, now my English is failing me, where people have to sometimes defend themselves to not get too much teaching because other people just want to get rid of their teaching. So we don't have it that much. So it's a very nice environment to work in. What do we expect from job market candidates, which is one of the other things I should talk about. Generally, we hire in the international job market. So when the job market comes, and that's normally in November, when people start applying, before Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving is normally the deadline. We get all kinds of applications, just like how people apply to different universities in Europe. It all is centralized, kind of, they all go at the same time. We also participate in that market where we basically hire mainly Canadians and Europeans, sometimes some candidates from the US. And it's generally is quite competitive, I would say. Like if you get an offer from McGill or from the University of Toronto, we'll lose out. Other offers from other universities, I'm not so sure. Like we're generally in that kind of sphere. And European candidates generally do prefer the Bank of Canada, given that the pay difference between European universities and the, so it's quite competitive. This year we hired an econometrician from Lisbon, for instance, who was Canadian. Yeah, he had a good job market talk. So it's quite competitive. That's, I guess, what I want to say. What are the other topics I should cover? Yeah, so once you work at the Bank of Canada, what is expected of you? I think I talked a little bit about it already. Publish research. So generally what you do is your first promotion you get once you publish two papers in academic journals. Generally the bar is the Canadian Economic Association journal. And then anything above is of course a plus. If you have a top 5 or a top 3 in finance or econ, gets you an automatic promotion. After that, it's about how do you participate in an organization? How much do you contribute to the policy discussion? So that's generally how you kind of grow within the Bank of Canada and how you get your promotions. And in the end, you can choose to become a very excellent researcher. And there's some positions out there within the bank that allow you to do a lot of research. There's also a stream where you can go into the policy stream where you manage teams if you prefer that at a certain moment in your career. I'm much better at answering questions than about telling stories, so I'll leave it there. And if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them as honest as I can.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we'll be moving on to Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica from Group d'Analyse, or Analysis Group. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and then a little bit about Analysis Group. So my background is I have a PhD in economics from the University of Toronto. I studied empirical economics, so my area was generally urban economics, and my thesis was about gentrification in New York City and neighborhood change and how labor markets impact those things. I'm doing none of that now, but that's sort of my background. I was on the job market in 2017, so it's been a little while now. And I was actually pretty fortunate on the job market. I ended up with 3 different offers, but one was academic, one was public, and one was private. And I ended up choosing the private offer because A, the compensation is incredibly attractive, and B, because it felt like it was actually the best fit for me. I can speak from my own experience. I did not love the academic world. I liked research conceptually. I didn't like the actual sort of environment around it. It felt like a lot of like a cool kids club that I was not really a part of. And so when I interviewed with Analysis Group, the main reason why I did choose the job is because of the people that interviewed me. They were very similar to myself. It was a young office, and I felt like I would belong there or fit there, or my colleagues would be more friendly than they would be this sort of like hierarchy in status, as it was in like my experience with academia. So that's why I chose Analysis Group. So what do? We are a consulting firm, and it's a US based company, but they have one Canadian office, and the Canadian office is in Montreal for various reasons. One of the founding partners had connections here, and so when the company grew big enough, they decided to come back to Montreal and open up the office here. So most of the work we do is in the US courts. So I say courts because there's two sort of, well, actually there's three now areas of work that Analysis Group does. There's their litigation practice, which is where I am. There's their health economics and outcomes research practice. And there is a newer, much smaller, but growing rapidly data science practice. So on the litigation side, so we work mostly supporting academic experts. So it's people who have a very strong CV for the most part, who've published a lot in their particular area. So they are like considered experts in their field. And so we support them in as a testifying expert. So they'll put together expert reports based on the data that is received, the documents that we look through. And we are really the, middleman between the lawyers who are representing the company in the litigation and the expert who is actually putting their name on this product at the end of the day and has to be the one to defend it. So it's a pretty interesting, I personally really like it for a variety of reasons. One of them being that you're never really doing the same thing. So every single litigation is a different context, a different court, a different just area of data that you have to look through and sift through and figure out what is going on there. With the caveat that at the end of the day, you are representing a particular client. And so there are particular outcomes that you want to find in that data. So it's not always great. If you want to be a very like holistic researcher, there is that caveat to it, but it is a lot of data, and it's kind of fun because in academia, I don't know about you guys, but I, on the job market or when I was doing my thesis, was really struggling to find data that would show me what I wanted to do without having a grant and without having sort of powerful connections to data sets. And then now working in a private consulting company, if you need data, they're just like, cool, here it is. There's no sort of price tag that is too high. So you get to look at a lot of different things. A little bit more specifically, so what I'm working on right now is a lot of IP cases, so intellectual property, and sort of looking at the value of people's ideas mostly. And when it comes to the courts, the reason they're being sued is because basically I had this idea first and you're copying me. And so I'm actually working with the data science practice right now, not as a data scientist, that is not my area, but we are looking through a lot of conversations and source code and trying to figure out and map similarities between two different source codes for these two different platforms without being too specific, and looking for what could be similar and sort of who did it first. And so there's also, I mentioned this HEOR practice. So they hire anyone with an economics background or a biostatistics or an interest in health even. It does a lot of working with pharmaceutical companies and doing sort of chart reviews for various trials and medications and looking at the outcomes on those. And then the data science is, even though I kind of like dip my toes into the data science area, I'm a little bit unclear what they do, other than putting together like portals for us to explore data. So what we're looking for in terms of employees, so the biggest thing I think we look for is, first of all, an interest in consulting. If you really want to go academic, you will be very disappointed in switching over here. I think we kind of tell people that you could still pursue your own research, and you can, I mean, theoretically you can definitely do that, but it's consulting. So it's a very demanding job and it's not for everybody. And so the last thing you kind of want to do after working long hours, at least for myself, is do more work on a computer and dig through your own for your own research. So I tried it for about 1.5 years to keep my own stuff going, and then it's just like I can't do this anymore, and it wasn't important enough for me to continue to do that. So we want people who are very interested in consulting, people who are intellectually curious. There is a lot of, you have to learn new industries really quickly. So having an ability to sift through lots of literature and documents and sort of get yourself up to speed with it in a matter of days is big. We want people who are collaborative. So we work exclusively in teams. You're never doing anything on your own. You are always part of a team of anywhere from 4 to 40 people. I'd say the average is probably closer to 6 people on a team, unless the case is a very large one with multiple expert reports. So you're working very closely with these people at all levels, and it's collaborative. So you need to be in constant communication. You need to tell people what you found. At the intro level, you wouldn't really be necessarily interacting too much with the experts or the lawyers personally at the beginning, but you would be part of those calls. And especially on the smaller teams, there's lots of opportunities to actually get your ideas out there, and we appreciate those ideas. So I think that's what I had to say. It's cool. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. And last we'll have Alexandre, who I believe has slides, or no?
Shortly.
Shortly,
Okay, hi everybody, Alexandre Grekovetsky. Si vous voulez parler en français, aucun problème, posez les questions de votre choix en français ou bien sûr en québécois, m'occupe de toi, pas de trouble. M'en faire plaisir. Merci. Just check and see if there are any bilingual folks out there. That was quite nice. So this will be in English, but I'm indifferent to the language of choice. And I do have some slides for you. What I wanted to do is talk to you about what it is to work in the Government of Canada. And I have some very practical considerations that I'll put up in a moment. But before I get there, so let me just get the white elephant out of the way. I do not have a PhD in economics, and it is a bit confusing to me as to why I'm here in the first place, because how could me, with a lowly master's degree from Concordia, contribute to the vast body of knowledge that clearly this room represents? And so in that context, this is going to be a little bit of a different flavor profile. I studied all of the mathematics courses that I could take at the graduate program here, and the professors, if you have a healthy disrespect for them, that's fine, but let me tell you, some of the older professors, they continue to have a massive impact on my career. That's how important they are, despite being in the academia world. And I'm going to start with a lesson. Now I have to figure out, okay, attends, si je fais le screen. You know, if my daughter was here, she'd be laughing. Okay, start broadcast, that should work. Un instant, almost there. Parfait, un à la fois. So this is the lesson. Mais alors, un instant. This is the lesson that took me a long time to learn, and it was on the screen. Why can I not? Could we just share it? There we go. This is the title of the slide. I'd like to take a second to read it in the yellow. It took me a long time to learn this lesson. And if I could teach it now, even better. When I was looking the way many of you look now, I would speak in complex terms. And Brian Campbell, for me, one of the greatest professors of my time, who's still associated to the university, he would beat it into us. Speak simply. It doesn't matter what you know if you cannot share it simply. So the top part is a complicated way of saying, let's talk about what it means to work in the government. That's it. And if you can't get that, you're going to struggle in the government, because a lot of people will not have your education. They're going to look at you saying, wow, you have so much to give me, but I don't understand. I'm sorry. And they're going to move on. And they will move on. No matter what you have to say, they will move on. I've lived the experience. I said, I've got the answer, but they're going to move on. They don't get it. And it is your job with this vast body of knowledge to figure out how to simplify whatever it is you want to share. That's lesson 1. Brian Campbell again, lesson 2. So at some point, you might want to think about what it means not to be in year 1, 3, 5, but where you want to go. And this is Brian Campbell, before he even met me, doing orientation of people who might want to join the economics program. And he said, you've got to think forward 10, 15 years. And this is slide 2. So slide 2 is about the key leadership competencies to become an executive. And if that's what you want to be, then you have to gear yourself now for this. Because if you don't pass every one of these elements, you can't do super well in innovation, which I'm sure all of you can do, and then skirt your way on the others. You will not make it. It's binary. You pass or you do not. Learn the lesson now that these 6 elements are fundamental to your progression in the federal public service. And I'll give you an example. I will not repeat what my colleague said earlier. Collaborating with partners, it's in the bottom center. You are tested, you are evaluated, reference checks are done. We can talk about achieving results. I'm sure everyone here can say, hey, this is great. I can achieve results. I can deliver on a question, no problem. You're tested, you're evaluated, reference checks are done. But how do you do it? Bottom right, uphold integrity and respect. Are you bilingual? This is a country that is bilingual. You cannot go to the senior levels unless you are. How do you treat your coworkers, not from as collaborators, but Canada is a melting pot of the world. We come from everywhere, and it's surreal. It's unbelievable, the experience, how rich the conversations are when you see those different perspectives from around the world, all in one room around one table, trying to achieve one objective. All right. Mobilizing people is about inspiring them to create and build an idea and trusting them. Can you do that? So I covered 3 of the 6 executive competencies. You don't need to take pictures. You can Google key leadership competencies. It'll bring you right to the page where this image exists. I'm going to move on now. Non-executives. So if you want to become an executive, you got to think of a few things before you get there. Every competition, every level, as you go through the levels, and every year, you are assessed across a range of competencies. This is simply a selection of them. Can you communicate? Written, verbal, very important. What does written mean? It could be a PowerPoint, a briefing note, a 2-page note. I'm sure everybody here can do a 15-page synopsis. Synopsis, that's an oxymoron, 15-page synopsis on something. Can you do it in 1 page? What's the point? Who cares? And that's binary. Can you do it or can't you? And can you do it in an hour? Judgment. So I'll ask you to do something, you'll be a junior officer, and you will get it wrong, and that's fine. But are you going to get it wrong close enough to where I want to be? Are you going to get it wrong where I'll say, wow, darn it, I didn't ask you the question the way I should have. You've challenged my thinking, still the wrong answer, but you've challenged my thinking, you've given me something useful. Let's have a conversation, go back and start over. What did you do when you were asked to do something? If I asked for X, did you give me X or X plus 5? What did you do? All right, these competencies come up over and over and over again. And among the executives, we talk about the non-executives routinely. Are they ready for promotion? Yes, no. Is it a promotion where they will have to apply and go through a process of a written exam? Maybe, maybe not. I'm going to move on. Let's talk about money. This comes up quite a bit. Let's get it out of the way. So in the world that I come from, the EC world, the range is 62 to 130. When you join the organization, depending where you join, you know, as PhDs, you might be able to negotiate a level 4 and start at 74 to 86. I don't recommend it because at an EC4, you are expected to know a lot about the organization, how it functions. My recommendation, if you see an EC2 job out there and you succeed and you qualify, don't ask questions about the EC4. Don't. Take it and run. This is what happens when somebody who is technically overqualified, but they don't have the other skills and they walk into an EC2, they realize, wow, I'm technically a heck of a lot stronger, but I don't know how the organization works. And let me tell you, those folks, they accelerate this through the system like you wouldn't believe it. 3 years ago, I hired a young lady, master's in neuroscience out of McGill. She is today EC2. She is today, 3 years later, EC6. I finished promoting her 4 weeks ago. All right. She didn't say, I've got a master's in neuroscience and I deserve more. I've had people that tell me, Alex, I have a master's or a PhD in this, I deserve more. And prove it. And this young lady did. 30 years old, EC6, no problem. And I've told her she's like a smidgen away from EC7. She's that good. But she came to the job with humility and poise, saying, I am here to learn and to contribute. And she did. So the levels don't matter if you know you can do it. And somebody might say, well, the salary range is not important. Compensation is important to you. And that's fine. The private sector is there for that. But there are other benefits. There are massive benefits. If I have to not be at my work because my kid, she's nervous and she needs to fail an exam. She might fail an exam, which she did 3 days ago. Right? So she's 11. She was struggling on a question. I texted my boss, said, listen, I'm not coming in until 10. I've got to walk my kid to school and just settle her down. She has an exam. And my boss said, yeah, whatever, no problem. My boss knows I'm going to pull in 50, 60 hours. She doesn't care. Doesn't care at all. Yes, you're paid for 37. At our levels, you don't worry about that. So the opportunity to have a relaxed, flexible work environment, that's huge. Plus the generous benefits, healthcare is taken care of. I've got to say, look, it's hard as you wouldn't believe to try and fire somebody. You have a job for life. You want people to treat it with respect. So I know with certainty that all my bills are paid right till the end of the university education of my 4 kids. It's certainty. Yes, I won't live in the biggest house. That doesn't matter to me. So decide what matters to you, and it's no problem. It's not a problem. But if you can live with this, then great. Great work-life balance. Now, shifting careers, the third point, what does that mean? It means I was in data science for most of my careers. My 25 years, I built 4 teams in data science across the board. I was happy to do it. I'm a specialist in this area. What does it mean for foundational data? What does it mean to set up a data pipeline, to build a dashboard? I'm going to show you one in a moment. What does all that mean? And I really am at the extreme end of competencies when it comes to this field. But after 25 years, I got a little tired. I asked to switch. I am no longer in a data science team. It's that simple. I switched. I could have gone to programs. I've developed programs before where an $80 million program to protect bus stations from terrorist attacks. I designed one of those programs in my career. I managed another funding program to give money to airports to protect them against terrorist attacks, build a more secure facility. This richness in diversity doesn't necessarily exist elsewhere, because what I'm doing something that will benefit Canadians directly. And that is a value to me. And if it's a value to you, then you've got a good shot. And if it's not a value to you, that's okay too. That's fine. You want to help one client at a time, it's no big deal. But I love being able to meet a random Canadian on the street and they say, what do you do? I think about homeless Canadians and how I can help them. I do think about that. And that is the purpose of the next slide. It is. So 2 more slides to go. This is a dashboard built by one of the kids. I call them kids. I'm sorry. You all look, you're fantastic. You look good. You look great. I wish I looked, beautiful men and women across the board. I don't have that anymore. All right. So I hire these kids. They come in. They know so much more than I do. And I'm humbled by it. So one of the kids did this. And what you see on the screen, it's a dashboard in Power BI. A tremendous amount of work went in to building the foundational data layer. And it's not interactive. I took a screenshot. Basically, it's where a bunch of bridges are in Ontario. And the infrastructure, what does that have to do with homeless Canadians? You overlay that data with where vulnerable Canadians happen to live. And that's what the colors mean. So where it's red, you have more vulnerable Canadians. And I said homeless, doesn't have to be homeless. So the red can be, we have a lot of people coming to this country who don't speak English or French. They are vulnerable. They cannot easily access the services to which they have a right to access. We want to know where they live. StatCan has the data. The data is right there. When I joined the government, it was like in a candy shop. The data was everywhere. You need the presence of mind to sort it, organize it, bring it together. And so you have in the bottom center the cities. Green is, those cities are doing well in terms of their economic dependence, and they don't have any vulnerable Canadians at a city level. But if I were to drill down, and I'm drilling down here at Donesta, it doesn't quite, this sucks. I cannot scroll all the way down because the last slide. What if I do this? There we go. So now what I've done, I had to do some manipulation here. This is on the left-hand side, you can't really read it. These are what's called dissemination areas. StatCan collects data at the street level. Every couple of streets is called a dissemination area. And now we see there's a 4.0. You see in that particular dissemination area along Highway 401 near Toronto, there are more vulnerable Canadians living there from economic dependency. They need money. Ethno-cultural, so they come from around the world. Residential instability, they tend to own their homes, they don't rent them. And situational, there seems to be, as an example, a higher number of single mothers with children. All that's important when you think of bridge infrastructure, because if the bridge goes down for a repair, these people who are vulnerable probably don't have cars. They need to take a bus. That's an extra hour to get to work. These are the questions I think about that touch Canadians directly. And these Canadians will never know who I am. That doesn't matter. I'm inspired by this stuff. Like deep down inside, this inspires me. So if you're inspired to work on projects that touch Canadians directly, maybe government is an option for you. Yeah, the pay is not the best. Yes, you could make more elsewhere, but there's so much more that comes into play that I think is worth giving it a shot. That's it for me. Thank you very much. Ryan, my friend.
Well, thank you all three of you for your presentations. Before we go to everyone else for questions, whether it's in person or in Zoom, last year there was a question we got that I think I misinterpreted, so I stated it the wrong way. And I believe the person of interest is actually here, so I think I'll hear it if I don't correct this. When it comes to hiring people, do you guys care that much of the age of the graduate if it's more like on the older side? So I think last time when I asked, it was more like, I guess if they were a young PhD. But what if someone's, let's say, graduating at 35 or 40?
It's illegal. Sorry, it's illegal, period.
I get that that would be illegal in practice, but I mean...
The demand is too high for the skill set. It's illegal, period. If you qualify, you qualify. I don't care what you look like. You look like me, I don't give a shit. Sorry. Can we delete that from the audio? It's illegal, period. And if somebody takes that into consideration, maybe you don't want to work for that person.
Fair enough, that's a strong answer. I got nothing for that.
I want to take the microphone.
Just speak into it.
Yeah, so my co-author, which was on the market after me, but he's also much older than me, got the job at the Bank of Canada, so it didn't matter. It didn't matter. We look at your paper. It's a good paper, good research, nice guy. That's kind of what matters. Age, not so much.
Yeah, exactly the same analysis group, like irrelevant. If you've done we look at people's CV, job market papers, like you're on paper, right? We have nothing, we don't know who you are, and not that it matters, but we judge you all on the same basis, and then you come in and meet the person, and it's like, could you work with us? And I think that's the big part, is we spend a lot of hours together, and you want somebody who you get along with, and so it doesn't matter whether you're 25 or 45.
Okay, thank you very much. So does anyone here have any questions for our guests? I guess.
Yeah, maybe I can. I don't know if you're here.
Probably better to just give you a microphone. Here you go.
All right, thanks. Thanks to you three for the interesting presentations. I could ask the question in Quebecois, but I will do in English because I want answers from everyone. So I know that in the academic job market and in the academic world, contacts and networks, like prior to being on the job market, are a big thing. So I was wondering, in the private sector, and government sector, since you three are in these sectors, how important this is?
I can say not important at all. The only way that it could help is if, say, you knew me or you knew one of my colleagues really well, we could just like not make sure your resume or your application gets looked at, but that's really it, who you know, and it's irrelevant. Like, you want good references. If one of your professors writes a really bad reference, that's not great. So that's, as much as contacts matter, I think that's sort of the extent of it. Do you have a good, like, do you have a support network behind you who can attest to your abilities? But that's it. We get a pile of applications, and pretty much every single PhD application that we get that we look at. Yeah, unless their application's incomplete. Those are the only things that get you sort of bumped out.
I would say it's very important. We get about 400 applications. There's job market papers attached to it, which are often 30, 40 pagers. There's letters attached to it. I'm not going to read every paper. I'll try to read every introduction, probably some with more attention, less attention. If you want my attention, yeah, probably someone needs to pinpoint towards your resume. It's just how it goes. Like, I wish it wasn't, but how I got my I went to the job market, so I don't know exactly how my job market went, but I know what I did for my co-author. I called all my friends at different universities, and I would say 50% of those places he got talks just because I emailed them and I called people who I knew there. So it matters. It's important, especially to get your interviews. And if you go to the job market, if you're lucky, you get 10. If you get 10 without someone talking for you, you'll probably get 20, 25 with someone actually pushing you hard. I think that's the reality of the academic part of it, academic job market.
So we heard one answer that maybe less so, one answer yes, and in typical economic format, I'm going to go right down the middle and let you take a value. To get the job, you do need strong references, but you must have the ability to build a network once you have the job. You must. So if I ask you to do something and you are unable to do it, don't say you're unable to do it. There's a directory, use it. You have lunch breaks you have coffee breaks, meet your colleagues, figure out who is where, say, hey, I just joined the organization. You're working on something that sounds interesting. Can we go for coffee? And over time, as you are asked to do things, you realize, oh, this person can help me. That person can help me. And when you build that network, your job, you become that much more powerful in your job. And through that network, you can easily later find another job and another job and another job. The first one, make sure references are in line. And even the other ones to follow, make sure references are in line. But your capacity to build a network is critical to the overall success of your career. Not essential, but it is critical. You can have a good career without a network. You'll have a better career with a network, a much, much better career. Ça vous convient? Pas trop.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone else in the room have a question? Please on the back.
Yeah, so I just wanted to follow on what Lerby said. You said that you get 400 applications and you only read the introduction. So I kind of got worried. So how do you judge our papers if you only read the intros?
Well, I think when I went to the job market, we spent like a year or 2 years on writing the paper. You probably spend 2 months before the job market just polishing the introduction. For that reason, because no one will, so what normally happens is you read the introduction and then you go through the paper and look at the tables, look at the plots, and then you figure out like, okay, so given introduction, now I understand the table, no description at the table or at the figures, it's going to be harder for me to understand. And so as you go, you want to do it as quickly as possible, because at a certain moment it becomes a very painful process. I read about 3-4 papers a day. I don't have 100 days to go through all and that's also what happens at universities and at, well, with us probably too, you know. You just read the introduction, look at the resume. Sometimes people just read the abstract even. It's just the reality of it. Sorry.
Do either of you have anything to add?
I say that we review every single application, but it's with that caveat of we definitely look at the introduction, the abstract. First of all, what's the field that you're in? Is it something that is translatable? The cover letter is by far the most important part of the application. We want to see that you're actually interested in consulting and that it's like tailored to our job. Reference letters are important, but we do, for the pile of applications that sort of make it through the initial cut, those ones everybody reads, I think, most of it, with a more critical eye to the abstract and the introduction, and then the rest is looking through to see, are the tables like beautiful? We put together a lot of materials for clients and counsel, and we are very sort of like nitpicky on the little details, and those really matter. We want to see that you've put the attention to detail into your job market paper that you've been working on for 2+ years, in the same way that you would be to a report that you're working on for 2 months. Those attentions to detail matter a lot. And then, can you write? Written communication is super important. Again, job market papers that we know that you've been working on for years, if there's like a lot of grammatical errors and a lot of missed citations, those are huge red flags. We're not going to sort of keep going on an applicant who's had this like large amount of time, who didn't get it proofread. And so just things like that, of that extra level of polish is really important. The content is important too, but it's more those, we want somebody who's could be a good academic contender, but you don't have to be doing the most sort of like cutting edge research. I know there's a lot of like buzzwords in academic publishing of, this is the first paper to ever do this. And sure, that's great. But these sort of like extra level of details are really, is it an interesting paper? Did we enjoy reading it without getting sort of bogged down in those things that are messy?
So I'll come at from a different perspective. The most precious resource is time. How much time do I need to figure you out? And if I need a lot of time, it's going to become a problem. My CV is 3 pages. I see CVs of entry candidates at 6-7 pages. Right away, you're not respecting my time. Right away. So I'll read the abstract, certainly, if it's there. And if I'm seeing an attempt to solve a practical problem, I'll get very interested very quickly. If it's a theoretical exercise, maybe less so. The CV, same thing. Is it a practical CV? Hands down, this is the problem that I tried to solve, and here's what I did. Cover letter. What are you doing in this cover letter? Is it just a cover letter that you wrote a year ago and you refresh it a little bit here and there and you send it out? Or is it a cover letter that is specific to helping me do something? Are you proposing your candidacy as a mechanism to save me some time? You happen to work in this area, Mr. Whoever you're writing to, this is a problem you're facing, here's how I can help you. I want to help. And it doesn't have to be long either. You see it right away, practical, not theoretical. I'll trust you know the theory. Merci.
I guess just to elaborate a little bit more on how you guys were looking at the questions, because I at least think with 2 of you it would be more on like the experimental or data side, but would you give more of a preference to something that's, I'll say, somewhat more interesting and novel, or I'll say like technically impressive? Would there be much of a difference between those two when it comes to actually like having someone read it?
I can say this is why we have multiple people read every application. I personally don't really care if it's novel or technical, but if it's an interesting question and I understand it, that goes a long way. But like, we definitely want people who are technically strong. I think by the time we are you can get a pretty good sense. We definitely want people who are technically strong. But that doesn't mean you have to be doing some crazy micro theory paper that has no practical application. That said, if you have we've hired theoretical microeconomists, we've hired theoretical macroeconomists, we've hired econometricians, a lot of labor economists, I think just because of the nature of who sorts into labor economics and is interested, is also people who might be more interested in consulting. But yeah, I think this is why we have multiple people reading the applications, is because some people are more gravitated towards interesting econometric problems that are being solved, and others are more interested in the data that you used and how you looked at it.
In the end, we look for someone who can publish papers in academic journals. So if it's very technical, but we don't think it's publishable, then we kind of look for like, hey, okay, maybe this paper is like that, but maybe has potential. So we are definitely, there have been definitely candidates where the paper was, yeah, maybe not cutting edge, but we could see like a rough diamond, and we're very much willing to take those candidates as well to develop them. And we do, given that our focus is on like teamwork and yeah, working with a lot of people, we see the potential to kind of polish people in a certain, or to help them along publish papers to journals. So in that sense, there's capacity. We allow for capacity of growth. But in the end, yeah, we're just like an academic institute. We're academics looking at candidates and thinking like, is this publishable? If it's very technical but nothing new, probably not that interested. But if it's something very simple but new, we'll be very interested. Yeah.
Alexandre, do you have anything to add to that?
You were specific to my colleagues. I felt excluded.
I was actually leaning more towards you guys for empirical stuff, actually. Well, when it comes to like evaluating some of these like cover letters and some, let's say the research, is it more about like interesting or like skills, like the technical side?
Practical. It's got to be practical. I'm indifferent. If it's hyper innovative but not practical, that suggests that maybe the employee is somebody that will go off and work on something that's really innovative, but how do I solve a problem that we need, that Canadians need in some respect? And I will add something else. Do I read humility in the paper? So I'm really clear about what I've learned in my CV when I apply. How did I grow from job to job to job? I'm really clear about this. And I like to see people who say, I worked on this. I didn't manage to answer every question, but this is what I did. And that's who they are. So I like that. If I can give them feedback, I get really interested in a hurry. If I can't give them feedback, sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Hopefully. Okay, would we have a way to see the questions on the Zoom link? There aren't any? Oh, I saw a red mark, that's what I thought. I had questions from last year. I was texted these, but I wasn't checking my phone last year, so I didn't get some of them. When it comes to your respective jobs, because they're all a little bit different, like you touched on it a bit more in yours, but like, how would you describe the work-life balance? Like how many hours, let's say a week, are you expected to be there in a typical week? Is it consistent throughout the year, or is it kind of like ebb and flow? Would you guys be able to touch on that?
So I'll start. When I started my career, look, everyone's paid for 37.5 hours. That's it. Lunches are not paid, breaks are paid, that's it. And if that's all you do, I'm happy. And I tell my teams, that's what you're paid for. Now, if you choose not to be efficient in a particular day, and instead of 7.5 hours in the day, you're going to work 9 hours, I'm okay with that. I don't care. Organize your day, figure it out. But you might want to do what I did. So I was paid for 7.5, 25 years ago, but I was doing 10, 12 every single day. And that's a choice. I was doing it by choice. Nobody asked me. And it allowed me to accelerate my career, accelerate my growth. And my bosses, the executives who were staying late regardless, they were, okay, Alex is there, thank God. Let's do more things. And these are choices that you can make, which if you do it in a certain way, you can use to accelerate your career to a point, not unilaterally, but to a point. And if you want to do the 37.5 hours, there's nothing wrong. You are welcome, you are adored, you are thanked. Do a good job, put in a full day's work. That's what taxpayers expect. And do something that they need. That's it. And it's not more complicated than that. But you can choose jobs that are crushing, absolutely crushing, and you know it going in. There's nothing hidden. This is a crushing job, and I picked 3 or 4 of those in my career, and I don't regret it. But it's always a choice. That's the beauty of the public service, and none of it's paid when you choose to go into these things.
Okay, I hate this question because I struggle between, do I give the AG answer or the honest answer? So work-life balance is a work in progress for, I think, everyone. It's a constant thing. I can say I had no issues with it for the first 3 years. Because I work in the litigation practice, it's a very sort of like up and down. I guess our salary is for like 40 hours, but I'd say the average is probably around 47, 48, at least for me. There's definitely, I've worked 60-hour weeks, 70-hour weeks. I've been not on projects that really go beyond that, but people have. Because we deal with the court systems, there are deadlines that are set. And so usually the 2 weeks sort of before a deadline, a filing date, is you will be working more. You will be working 12 hours plus to try to get things done. It's unavoidable if you want to sort of do well at this job. But as soon as the filing hits the next day, even if it's a Thursday, you can sleep in, show up at like 1 p.m. or don't show up, do whatever you want, right? Like you're in charge of there is a lot of flexibility with the schedule. But there are these sort of lumpy periods where things are due and there's no avoiding that. So if you're not great on unpredictability with your schedules, it can be a little bit challenging. So I said it was really good for me for about 3 years. I loved it. I thrived in this. And then I had a kid. And that the unpredictable schedule is a lot harder to handle when you are tied to a daycare schedule and you're tied to a kid being sick and needing to stay home. And I'm working through it, and I've learned I'm now sort of trying to set these boundaries. I do a lot of, I'll be on from 9 till 5, and then I'm off from 5 till like 8:30. And then depending on where I'm at, I'll log back on at 8:30 for an hour or two to finish up things. A lot of the times, the reasons we'll log on in the evening is because you don't have any meetings and you can finally sort of review things that you want to get people started on the next day. So with sort of that caveat of with the caveat of it can be a lot. You are very well compensated, and at the end of the year, when you get your bonus, you're just like, okay, maybe this was all worth it. So I guess it's consulting. So I'm not going to lie, it does have bad periods, but you do have a lot of flexibility in your schedule. And one of the nice things about at least AG compared to other consulting firms is the people are really great. So because we work on teams, you're never the only person who is responsible for something. So if you have an emergency, like by all means, like that's a priority. I've never had to stay at work instead of taking care of my family. And that should be going without saying, but I wanted to put that out there. You will never be sort of punished for putting your family first. I think it's a lot of, you need to be the one to set your own boundaries on your schedule and figure out what works for you. I think coming out of the PhD, at least I was like, yeah, cool. I'm all like keen and I'm young and I can do all this. I'm in a new city. Yeah, that changed when I had a kid, but it's consulting.
Let me first set the environment at the Bank of Canada. We have basically 8 days a week, 8 days a month, sorry, that you have to come into the... We have a fourth space, I guess. We have 8 days a month that you have to come in. I live in Montreal, but I work in Ottawa. So once a week I go there and I stay at night and I come back. Yeah, so then I guess most people kind of can fill in their day the way they want to, unless that you're in a specific team that has to produce something on a daily basis, but normally in a PhD you don't have to. Most teams, some teams have big models and they have predictions, and that's like once every quarter you have to get those predictions out, and so that's more cyclical. My team doesn't really have that, so it's less cyclical. But generally the setting for a researcher coming into the bank is you're kind of like an entrepreneur. You produce a paper, it's for your own name. The harder you work, the more you can attach to your name, the better known you become, the better you publish. And I think that's kind of drives you towards working like 50, 60 hours. And probably you're also interested in your own research. So that kind of pushes you. If you choose to take a policy career, I would say you can easily fit that within the 8 to 5 spectrum, or 9 till 3, and then in the evening a couple of hours. Yeah, now that I have a kid, I procrastinate less. So so when I actually work, I work hard, and I would say I work like 45 hours a week, and I'm able to fit everything in there within those and be successful. So there's a really good balance, and given that we print money, there's a lot of emphasis on your well-being and your mental health, and you get sick of constantly getting those messages. But there's a lot of emphasis on happiness as opposed to productivity in your job. You have to be productive, but generally they measure stuff with how happy are our employees. So if you want to have a good balance, it's definitely possible.
Thank you very much. And okay. See, otherwise I was going to keep inventing things.
Hi, I really appreciate all this input. I have a question. I think, Alex, you mentioned the possibility to grow your network once you join. Along similar lines, given that Canada is a bilingual country, is there an opportunity to start a job without being bilingual, but with the willingness to show that I'm willing to learn a language? Is that a good thing? Is it valued? Even as I start, I don't speak any French.
So if you hear the question, do you need to be bilingual when you start? The answer is no. So at the EC2 level, I have no problems hiring somebody who's unilingual, maybe even EC4. EC5, this is a personal choice. I would not promote somebody to EC5 if they don't have their languages. I wouldn't do it. I know other managers who would. So there is some variability across the system. There is some flexibility. Why? Because I want my ECs to supervise as quickly as possible. You cannot supervise if you don't speak the language. And if you're at the senior levels, then you cannot engage with clients across the network if you're not bilingual. So at the junior levels, I've never seen a hard restriction when it comes to bilingualism. EC2, 3s when they exist, EC2, EC4, but there are some. I'm telling you there are. For me, I have none. But every organization, every department is a little bit different. If you're committed to being bilingual, then sign up to Duolingo and start now. And that's where you get it. And listen to French radio. There's a wonderful Sunday evening television show, Tout le monde en parle. It's basic French. It's wonderful. It's easy. It's fun. You have to start somewhere. And if you do it yourself, I've seen unilingual people learn the language very quickly. And if you're waiting to be trained, it's an expensive proposition. We'll train you eventually, but it's very expensive. Start now.
that I have the ability to learn a new language.
Certainly. I'm sure you have everyone has the ability to learn it.
And no, the fact that I have learned as an adult to speak a new language,
Right.
and I'm willing to put in the effort. So maybe at the start, I might not be able to speak French.
It's fine.
Okay.
It's fine.
And
But
does
all
it-
executives are qualified bilingual. Not all executives can speak French well. That's another issue. Yeah. Yes, my colleague knows, but we are all qualified bilingual. And I'm pretty sure at the EC7 manager, you're all qualified bilingual. I don't think I've ever seen a unilingual, and the 6, again, same thing.
And does this translate to the other workplaces?
I think bank is symmetric, but there may be some nuances.
Yeah, so within the bank, you start as, for a PhD, as a senior economist. We care in the sense that if you speak French, it's a plus, but we don't select on it, kind of. Everything else equal, we'll hire the bilingual person. Everything else equal will never happen. So once you get promoted to principal, you'll get 4 years, 3 or 4 years to get to level 4, which is basically way above my level, and my level is not good. Level 6 is I guess best you can do, and once you go like to the higher levels, you'll start to need to have level 6, especially in managing positions. But there is, for entry, no requirements. But then once you get promotions, you'll get sent out, and normally that goes into the form of you'll be sent out for 3 months, increase your level, get tested, not at the level, again 3 months, get tested. And as a researcher, you hate that because it means you can't do any research for 3 months. So yeah, that's the way we handle it, I think. But there's definitely a strong push towards you learning French. And for me, it's my household. My wife is Belgian, but from the Wallonian side. So I'm still communicating with my hands, with my even with my kids. Actually, I am not able to speak French. So yeah, so there's a drive outside of work.
The Quebec government's going to hate this answer, but French is irrelevant. We are an American company, so I'd say 95% of the work we do is in the US. We do have a couple of accounts in Quebec, which obviously have the people in the office who speak and converse and write in French fluently. The interview is all, everything's in English. The office is very Quebecois though. I think again, just people sort to from around the province. We do hire from all the universities in Quebec. So the sort of like coffee, like the water cooler talk is oftentimes in French. The like hall banter is oftentimes in French, but the work itself is all English. And so I think it's more important to show your written competency in English than anything in French. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions from the audience? Up, back.
Hello, thank you. I'm Colin. I have one question for all of you. It's in remote working. I wonder, how do you deal with the flexibility or in remote working in your different companies? That's the first question. I don't know if I can ask many questions or should I go one by one?
I'd say let's just go one by one for now, but
Okay, yeah, that's the first one.
Since I got the microphone, I'll start. So we currently have a hybrid model of work, which evolved out of the pandemic. Before it used to be all in person, unless there was extenuating circumstances when you had to work at home. But we now a lot of people do work from home every day. We don't really have people outside of Montreal working in the Montreal office. There are a couple of people who have moved to Toronto recently, and they're working 100% remotely, but they're more senior, and so they were able to negotiate that. But it is a hybrid model right now. Everything we do is through like Teams and Zoom for the most part. The office is downtown here. I personally much prefer going into the office because like it's so much bigger than my tiny little apartment, which had a very like COVID makeshift office space created for me. But it's, yeah, so it's flexible. It's, you can work at home if you have to. I go in 4 days a week and then work at home 1 day.
I already said 8 days a month in the office. We have another arrangement where you have 6 weeks a year where you can work from anywhere. So I'm going to go back to Europe for a month, and I'm going to use 4 weeks of those to work from my parents' place. But generally very flexible. Yeah, if you haven't, like, I think in February and March, my kids were sick, so I didn't go in at all. But because they were sick, but no one said anything. Like I told them they were sick and they were fine with it. So in that sense, very flexible. Whatever is needed to get the job done, and the rest is like, well, we'll give you guidelines. Try to keep to those guidelines.
So the policy for federal public servants is 40% of your time worked. When there's 20 days of work per month, that's 8 days in the office. There are some variations. So as a manager, all supervisors and up where I work now, I've been there for a week, we are required to be there 3 days a week, 60%. Okay, so now I go 60% instead of 40%, whatever, no big deal. When it comes to the flexibility, I will confirm the colleagues. So there was a power outage for some parts of Quebec a few weeks ago over Easter. I was unfortunate, more than 5 full days without power. I got it on Monday night, Easter Monday, emailed my boss saying, listen, I'm a little tired. It was like +8 in my house. I can either come in, I could either take the week sick and stay home, or I could work for the whole week from home. And that's what I did. I worked from the whole week from home. And so I did not meet my commitment for the month of April. No big deal. In February, I went beyond my commitment. So people have that flexibility. But generally, 40%, 40 to 60% of your time is in the office.
Thank you very much. Your answers were really great. The second question is for especially Jessica about, I know analysis group hire a lot of PhD students. So I'm wondering if you're still working in a collaboration with the universities in some projects, and if yes, how often?
No, we don't work with universities. I'm not sure. What do you mean by projects?
Okay. Like if you have a project, like maybe some companies, a client they want to solve, does it happen that you go to some economics department to like? Okay.
No.
Yeah.
We always, all our staff at at least associate, which is the level and up, have PhDs, but not everybody, but by far the majority. And the only way we would collaborate with universities is if one of the experts that we're working with, so the experts are all academic affiliates, right? So they are tenured professors for the most part at universities. And so if they have a center that they really like to work with, that could be the only environment where I could see there being some sort of collaboration. But no, I think because of the confidentiality of all the stuff that we do, it's very much in-house. We don't share stuff outside of that. The experts have signed contracts so that anything that they look at is sort of under the confidentiality agreement. And so no, we don't collaborate with universities or.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought, but I just wanted to confirm. The next question is for Alexander. If I am a PhD student and I want to join your organizations, do you care about my field of interest? before like hiring me?
It depends. I'll be very careful how I answer that. I spoke about a young woman that I hired 3 years ago, master's in neuroscience, joining a data science team. You wouldn't think that I would want to hire somebody with a master's in neuroscience. It just so happens that she took a series of courses that were aligned with data. And she was able to solve practical data problems. And she works on the question of homeless Canadians, where she is now in my previous job that left a week ago. So master's in neuroscience, loves to work with data, working in support of homeless Canadians. That's not a path that you would naturally create on your own. It just happened that way. She brought portable skills into the job, and she loves working on this question. So the answer is no, but you have to be careful, right? You might work in an area that is so maybe esoteric or too theoretical that it may have limited practical value. And then I do care.
Yeah, thank you. And the problem you're solving, it's a wide range of that. I mean, it's not specific, I guess.
You could look on the government website. We solve problems for homeless Canadians, social services, payments, social, I don't know how you say in English, I'm sorry, unemployment issues, right? There's a whole department that deals with that. There's another department that deals with public safety of Canadians. Transport Canada, which is where I started 25 years ago. I spent 19 years at Transport Canada working on doing aviation forecasts. I was director of modeling and forecasting for a time. So I went from aviation forecast to working on marine safety and security data issues. That variability for me is just a pleasure and a motivation.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was all for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Colin, for those questions. Does anyone else in the audience have a question? Okay, then I'll go on my own. Whether it was this year or even last year when you guys were talking, there's often, like, you were talking about like what to do for going on the job market. Would you possibly have any examples, whether it's from your own experiences, possibly of your classmates in cohort, or even just on the hiring side, of common mistakes that PhDs are making when it comes to trying to get these jobs?
I have a good one. Is assuming that because we're in consulting that we're not going to understand your job market paper. There are a lot of people who do cool econometric stuff, and not a lot. It's happened a couple of times, and be like, oh, I do something really complicated, and just sort of glaze over what they do, and it's very insulting. We are all PhDs in economics, and we might not be econometricians, but we have the capacity to understand what you did. And I think just assuming that we won't is a huge red flag. So I think that's sort of the only thing that I think that's occurred to me where I'm like, ooh, we're not gonna proceed with this applicant. But yeah.
I think generally what helps is contacting people that are able to push you when you think about the academic job market, as I alluded to previously. So once you get your interviews, I don't know how much training I did to get like the 30-minute talk to get that right. It's a lot of practice, a lot of repetition, but my conversion rate of interviews into actually flyouts was very good. But that was because I practiced so much. So the common mistake that people make is they don't do that enough. Because I think when you do a lot of practice, and especially in front of other academics, they'll help you try to put it in layman terms and then build it back up, which makes it very understandable. Sometimes people dive into the details way too quick, and you'll lose the whole audience very quickly. Yeah, and then once you get a flyout, preparation again. Like, I don't know how much time I spend on preparing for this like 1.5 hour talk. So much time. Don't think that once you've done it once well, that's enough. It has to be a routine. It has to you should be able to do it with your eyes closed. Yeah, I think that those are that's the best advice that I can give. Like, even though you think that the details of the paper are the most important, it's probably how smooth you are, as bad as it sounds. But that is something that can be trained, even if you're not socially very gifted, as most academics, I guess, would identify as. But yeah, I think at the Bank of Canada, we also look at a pleasant colleague. So we had one time a job market candidate. He was so smooth that we didn't understand, how do you say, we didn't get a good feeling for who he actually was, because he always gave the not even the ideal answer, but like, hey, I want to help people, and that's where it stopped, kind of, where you have to fish what the person acts like. You couldn't really see who he really was. I think that alludes a little bit to your, like, if you show some mistakes and some shortcomings, you get better sense of who that person is and the real side of him, as opposed to some kind of front. And I think that is pretty disarming, and it helps the other party to gauge you even better, I think.
So I'm going to echo everything that we just heard here. You cannot under-prepare for these things. You just can't. When I became an executive, I had a document, 25 pages. I was inventing questions, writing down the answers over and over, and memorizing these things. Why? You're going to be told, we're going to invite you to an interview. You'll have 30 minutes to review the questions, and then you'll have the interview. Those 30 minutes, that's not the time to develop your answer. Those 30 minutes is to say, okay, what did I not prepare for? That's where you spend those 30 minutes, because you should have already nailed everything else. And you know this because in government, we're nothing if not transparent. There's going to be a sheet saying you applied for this job. These are the requirements for the job. So you can easily develop 6, 7 questions on your own on how to get ready. If it says communicate, we heard it from the lady to my left, right? This is really important. You better be ready to demonstrate how you've communicated. What I will strengthen from what we heard, show what you have done. Not, oh yes, I can build this model, no problem. I have built a model doing this. And here was one of the big challenges. For example, we had to check if the data was biased. And here's how I went about it, because the data was biased. And we didn't want to fake it. And we couldn't fix the bias, but we went after it as hard as we could. And we knew where the problem was. Hey, that's not bad. That's not bad. You cannot under-prepare for these conversations. Write it down.
And if we don't have any questions from the audience, I just got texted one. Would you be able to describe the hiring process specific to like where you work? Like how would a PhD candidate like go about this?
Can we start to go that way? Yeah. Okay, there's like 4 or 5 processes to get into government, and very simply, if you're still a student, FSWEP, just Google it. You can put your CV in there, you're in a pile, and if I happen to be looking for some of those characteristics, I'll get a random selection of who's in there. If only 20 people have that qualification and I'm looking for 25 CVs, I'm going to find you. All right, it's a random selection from my end. So you want to be very specific. FSWEP is one of them. I don't know if PhDs have co-ops, if that exists at all, but FSWEP is the really big one. You get in the door, when you graduate, I can just bridge you in, no competition, nothing. Smooth, straight in. Option 2, casual, maximum 90 working days per year. You can join the government. And if you're good and you have a degree in the last couple of years, you can be bridged into a position. Ask for a 2-year term, because 2 years goes by real fast. You give them a year, second year, sort out. Once you have a term position, you can apply for any internal job. So a term position is really important. Plus you get all the benefits. Now those are the quick ways in. The ones that are longer are people who run competitions. You got to apply, submit your CV. A couple months later, you're invited to an exam. A couple months later, there's an interview, then a reference check, then you might get a job. I don't recommend it. I never did it. It takes time. That'd be the quick answer.
We hire through the job market for PhDs. So we do the academic market. So the big hiring is the AEAs every January. And so you submit your CV, application, references all through the same, I can't even remember what, it's been so long, but sit through the same portal, and you just check off AG, you want to apply, and you submit your application. So we go through the academic job market. You would be part of the sort of like speed dating of jobs, the like 20-minute pitch where you have to like really sort of impress with your like ability to succinctly and clearly talk about your paper, and have a couple of follow-up questions back and forth. So that's the primary. We used to do the CIIEs in Toronto, but I think they didn't do them last year. So I don't know if we're doing that again this year. Those ones I believe are in December normally, but so yeah, the AEAs are the big one. And then after that, we'd go to the flyouts. So you would actually come to the Montreal office for I think it's half a day. It could be a full day, but I'm pretty sure it's half a day. You meet with a bunch of different people, go out for lunch. You give a 20-minute version of your job talk. So that's a challenge in itself, because I think you're oftentimes used to an hour plus to do it. But we're very busy consultants. So 20 minutes is what you get. And it's just a chance to also for you to see the office and see if it's a good fit. By the time you're at the flyout, we know that you're smart and we trust that you can do the job. It's more at that point, do you get along with the people that you're interviewing with? If you're sitting across the table from me, could you be a colleague for me? And that's the more important thing at that point, from my experience, at least, is are you somebody who is adaptable and like can get along with a diverse group of people? And then you get the job offer. So it's really a 2-round speed dating, longer date, and then possibly a relationship.
So for us as well, it's we go to the Canadian job market, which is in December in Toronto, I believe. We go to the American job market, the AEA. Generally, I think when you look for an academic job, you go to the AEA website or the AFA website if you want to finance a job market. There's an application portal. You go to the Bank of Canada website. You can submit your material. I think I talked already about how we go through the resumes and then interviews, and then the interviews get converted into a flyout. You get a full day at the Ottawa office. You present. Presentation is very important for us. You get an hour and 15 to convince us that it's publishable work and good work. And then during that day, you constantly meet people for half an hour. You get taken out for lunch, taken out for dinner. People sometimes underestimate the social, like how likable you are as a person. We again had last year, someone who had a good paper but was not likable, so we didn't see him as a colleague. So we didn't offer him a job, even though sometimes you have colleagues where you go like, yeah, we can develop him, but he was a really nice person. So, and then you're more tempted to kind of take a more positive view on that person. So that's part is quite important. But then after a flyout, you generally you get an offer or you don't get an offer. Sometimes we even if the flights are in January, we sometimes even get an offer in March. If the whole market runs out, we didn't match, we might go back to some other candidates that we flew out but didn't offer immediately.
Okay, thank you very much. And just possibly one rapid fire. Question from the audience, go.
We get a lot of training. I mean, of course, we put a lot of attention on writing the paper. Then on we present the paper many times. So I guess that these are the first and the third steps. And I'm kind of worried about the interview. So because I feel that for that we will get a relatively less training. So I was wondering if you have particular tips on how to prepare, how it goes. I guess the average duration is a half an hour, but I really don't know much about interviews. So I don't know if you can elaborate a bit on that.
I'll go for the academic, the AEA, how it goes, and how I prepared. I think what he said was probably like you write it down. You write down a 2-minute version of your paper, 5-minute version of your paper, 15-minute version of your paper, like a summary, and how that the 2-minute will automatically flow into the 5-minute. If you don't get interrupted, you go into the 15-minute. Writing it down means it somehow gets imprinted in you, and it allows you to practice it and practice it. Don't practice it just in front of the mirror or your significant other. Just get a couple of PhD students together. We at in Amsterdam, where I was, we had 2 or 3 rounds where we were doing the interviews with 3 professors in front, and you got feedback. At the LSC, like I wasn't on the job market anymore, but they even got an actor trainer. What do you call these things? Someone who trains you how to act. And so they would give you a video and they would evaluate your posture and everything. I didn't go through that training, but that's something to look up. But practice is the most important, and then getting feedback. But the 2, 5, 15, write it down, and then try to do it as smooth as you can.
Yeah, that sort of elevator pitch is very important. So from my experience on the job market, and this was about 6 years ago now, is so what you would actually expect is you are the AEAs take place right in big hotels, and so all of the universities or consulting companies have hotel rooms. If you're lucky, they've got a suite, and if you're not lucky, they've just got a double bed. And there is a wide range of awkwardness in these things. So if there's a suite, you go in, you shake hands, you sit on the couch, you sit in the chair, and you try and like not slouch too much, and just sort of get yourself comfortable, because it's an awkward environment at the end of the day. If you're not lucky, you are in a room with like the bed right there, and everybody's in the really uncomfortable desk chairs, pretending that there's not a bed right beside them. And so that's sort of like what actually it feels like, and you're running around from room to room to room. So the universities will say, I'm in room like 206 at this hotel, and you go up there and you meet them at the time of your interview. It's a half hour, 20 minutes, I think, and you give your sort of 10-minute pitch on your job market paper from the beginning to the end. Treat the consulting the same way you do the academic ones. And then from there, it's questions. So they'll start asking you questions about what you did, variety of sort of conceptual to contribution to the literature to what, like, I had one person who nailed down on like, oh my gosh, I had like one point estimate in one of my tables, and he was just like, what do you think about this minus sign? And I was just like, I never looked at that one before. So that was like not my best, but I think you should know your tables inside and out. I was much more focused on the main results, not the sort of like control variables. At least in this one, I was flustered for various other reasons. But so yeah, knowing your paper inside and out. But it's a weird experience, and I don't know if that answers your question of like what to expect day of. But that was my experience. It was just like some of them were a lot better than others, and I was really glad that I got the fly out with AG because it was one of the better ones. They had a suite, so I was like.
So I am trying not to repeat what I'm hearing from my colleagues, and you are getting different perspectives. I find this fascinating, and take it all in. All of it is worthwhile. I just want to make that point. For me, it's very important that whoever's in front of me, they answer the question. So if I talk about something, answer the question from my perspective, what matters to me. So tell me about yourself. How do you prefer that question? Well, in my case, I didn't think I would end up in economics. So I talk about how I ended up in, and I developed this passion of applied mathematics and a passion for bias in data. That is actually where I developed my passion. Quite by accident, I ended up in economics. I didn't know it existed. So talk about yourself. It's not, I grew up in this part of the world, I'm one of 3 children. That's not relevant to me as an employer, right? So you answer a question that's relevant to the person in front of you. And even your papers, when you describe yourself, shape the language relative to your audience. If you can do that, wow, That's cool. That's really, really cool. It shows depth of mind, awareness of the moment. I'll leave it there. Thank you. Of course. And we have a question.
Is it about the job market? Because I need to add to the job market. It has all gone digital. Like we don't do the hotel rooms anymore. Like this year, they organized a job market where the interviews themselves, no one goes anymore to whatever the city is. So that part of having a hotel room is now like spared. It was awkward. So.
That's great.
So we've discussed the job market paper, but people often have other projects. How relevant are these other projects that people are working on or have a first draft of?
So normally in the resume, in academic resume, some people put the abstracts in the resumes as well. So I read through them, I read the title. Sometimes the job market paper is not that relevant. So I go through the rest of the project and I look online to find the paper if it's there. So it's important. If it's not super polished, I understand. But it's also something I look at. But job market paper generally is what we look as a signal of quality.
Yeah, it's the same because we're not an academic job and there's no publishing required as part of the job. It's your job market paper is what we look at to show your ability to think and work through data and use econometrics. So that's anything else on your CV is bonus, but not like, it's not something we look at. One thing that I just thought about is if you have a job market paper that is co-authored, make sure that in your cover letter or somewhere you explain why. You've probably been told this before, but even in consulting, that's sort of something we look at skeptically because there's always the question of how much did you do versus how much did your co-author do. But we understand that a lot of the times they're co-authors because of sort of data access, right? Like their name has to be on it because they're the ones that have access to this. So I just thought of this. If that's the case, make sure that your cover letter says I co-authored my paper due to like this is why, and your referee should also speak to that. We want to see that if your professor will write a letter being like, yes, I'm a co-author, but so and so 100% wrote this themselves.
The job market paper is actually less important completely. So it's the body of everything you've done, who you are, get it all into your CV or your cover letter. And it has to be relevant to what we are looking for. You are applying to a job, most likely where the parameters are explained in advance. So tailor your application to that. Of course, the FSWEP, that's more random. You need to do a more generic approach. But if you know you're being called into an interview or you have a shot to work in a particular area, tailor your CV to that particular area. Whatever's relevant, bring it in. And the more relevant it is, it's on page 1. Less relevant, on page 2. We can talk about CV structure after at the bar if anybody's interested, because that matters as well.
Okay, another question from the audience?
First of all, I would like to thank you all for the information and advice. And I want to know, like for the new hires, is there any opportunities for them to rotate in different departments in the institutions so that they can know which department is a better fit and also help them to develop more diversified skill sets, which might be beneficial for their career? Thank you.
At the Bank of Canada, definitely. Normally, you PhD, do certain research. It doesn't fit necessarily in a single department, so it's easy to rotate then. If you decide to take more of a policy stream perspective where you want to maybe develop a career in policy, then it's much easier to switch. Like, yeah. So when it comes to research, you'll get like. I was a statistician mainly and some finance, but they told me like, you're at the bank, economic questions, so less methodology oriented necessarily. So they gave me time to kind of develop papers which were more oriented towards policy relevant topics. So you get that time and you can rotate within the department, and it happens a lot actually within the bank. So you get that space definitely.
We don't have departments, so that's the answer to that. You get to rotate through various subject matters. Everything's different, so you can work on a variety of like antitrust or intellectual property or commercial disputes or labor disputes, environmental stuff. So there's a wide variety of things, but there's no departments to go through.
So this is interesting. In the broader federal public service, the bank is a subset of that. Research positions are actually quite unusual. They do exist, but it is unusual. It's a very small subset overall of the group. Where there are, I'll say, quasi-research with a policy slant, yes, we do need econometricians, but you don't have 6 months to work on a research area. You might have a few weeks at most. And if you're closer to the action where politicians need to make informed decisions, you have even less time to formulate a question, come up with an answer. There was a question 2 years ago where, I was called into the office by a very senior executive, and he said, Alex, we need help. Can you fix this? And I had 15 days to come up with an entire data collection methodology, go and get the data, cleanse the data, build the dashboard, the whole thing. And on day 15, all deputy ministers were in a room receiving an overview of the data. That's how fast it was. Okay, so research is not, hardcore research is not something that's easy to find in the government. In the federal government, you can find it, but it's in very restricted areas. And even then, tied to a practical problem, because Canadians have a right to receive a service from us that is relevant to their needs. Right? It comes down to that. That's it.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, since I'm not seeing any questions, I guess just, would any of you have any somewhat closing comments you'd like to make before we wrap this up? I think we should, just because it's funnier.
Okay. Mic drop? No. What am I going to say? I would say, I think the mistake that I made in my first job market is not apply everywhere. I thought like, well, I'll pick the institutions. Don't do that. Just apply everywhere and you'll see who invites you. Cover letter for, I think the academic job market always goes in the trash bin. We know you have to apply to 400 places all at once, so we understand. I guess I have to promote Bank of Canada as well, no? It's an amazing place to work. I think every time I have critique on something, it's always in the back of my mind, like, it's amazing to work here, but. So in that sense, I think it's an amazing, it's a really nice place to work. And if you're pursuing an academic career in a policy-oriented institution, it's great. Like travel budget, research time, colleagues, like we have 100 PhDs who try to publish in top journals constantly. So if that's what you're looking for, then definitely Bank of Canada would be appropriate for you to apply to.
AG is also a really great place to work. It's if you have any interest in consulting, I would say you should definitely apply. We are interested in people with all backgrounds in econ and even outside of econ. I think we all spoken about sort of, or at least I did, about this like collaboration and how we're all working together. One of the things that I didn't like about academia was just doing it by yourself. You're sort of in your cubicle or your shared office space, and you're sort of figuring things out alone, right? You've got a bug in your code, you're figuring it out alone. There was a lot of sort of, at least in my experience, nobody really wanted to, I didn't feel that sort of sharing of knowledge or sharing of sort of experiences or snippets of code that could maybe help out. I found it very isolating. And this is the exact opposite of that, this sort of mentality of we do work long hours occasionally, but it really is the sort of like you win as a team, you lose as a team. If you make a mistake, it's not entirely on you. It's something that we work through as a team. When we win, we win as a team, right? We go out for celebratory dinner and drinks, and it's a lot of we are in this together, and if you've got any questions, you're there to support your team as much as the team is there to support you. So I know in my first month, I was staffed onto this one project, and I didn't know how to run this particular demand model, and one of my colleagues sent me a folder with all of his past code that might be helpful because he did something very similar. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. I'm not spending hours and days just sort of figuring this out on my own. We are, in the interest of efficiency, there's no need for anybody to recreate something that somebody else has already done. And just adapt it to your own purpose. So that's what I wanted to end on. If you have any interest in consulting, AG is great, and you get to work with people like me.
So I'll take a different approach. A great environment is dependent on you. If you walk into a job and expect me to make it great for you, that's a problem. But you can make any environment great, any of it. I've worked on stuff, I'm like, ugh. But it's an attitude choice. And if you walk in with the right attitude, I can make this great, fantastic. If any of you go to a job and you realize, wow, this is a really boring job, it's boring because you declare it to be so. The way to not do a boring job, be great at it. Be the best at it. And stand out. Get it done. Get it done with positive attitude. And maybe you have some colleagues that are suboptimal. Maybe you have a boss that's suboptimal. Those are their choices. Your choice is to make it great each and every day for yourself and for the people around you who might be looking to you for leadership. It doesn't matter if you're at the junior ranks. There are leaders at every level of an organization. So you choose to make it great, and you choose how you start and finish each and every single day. And if you come with that environment, that attitude, you'll be fine. Every job is a great job. You'll get the most out of it. And if you don't like the job, that's okay. Do whatever it is you're doing and do it with greatness, with pride. It doesn't matter if you choose consulting, a research environment, academia, or the bank. These are great options in front of you. What works for you, that's what's going to be a great thing for you. Great is subjective. You define it, not me. I'm in the government for 25 years. Those are my choices. I've had a great career. My kids are taken care of. I know university bills are paid for. It's great. Tonight I'll be in my hot tub 2 hours away. All right, and I might watch a movie and then go to bed with a glass of scotch. I have a great life, but those are choices that I make.
Well, thank you very much. On behalf of the organizers, I'd like to thank Fourth Space for helping us set up this event and run everything. And I'd like to extend a giant thanks to our speakers for sharing their time with us today. And from what we heard, they're all very busy, but we appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you guys so much for joining us online and for joining us here in person for this event. We are going to go ahead, just close it up, but you can revisit this conversation at any point in time on our YouTube channel, and it's available pretty much right now. So thank you again, and we'll catch you at the next event.